The sergeant's hand went to his holster as the blind man reached for the latch. "Step back, Arthur. That's not a dog anymore. It's a four-legged weapon with a broken trigger." But Arthur didn't stop. He knew that the most dangerous beasts aren't the ones that bite. They're the ones who have forgotten how to be loved. Welcome to Mr. Bryan's Tale, where every story takes you on an unforgettable journey. Whether it's thrilling adventures, heartwarming moments, or tales that'll keep you on the edge of your seat, this is your destination for captivating storytelling. If you love getting lost in exciting narratives and discovering new worlds with every video, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss out on the next amazing tale. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. The air in the K9 holding facility was thick with the scent of pine cleaner and raw, unbridled tension. Arthur stood perfectly still, his white cane gripped in a hand that didn't tremble, despite the cacophony of violence coming from Kennel 14. Havoc wasn't just barking. He was screaming in the language of a soldier who had seen the world end. The Belgian Malinois slammed against a steel mesh, a 90-pound sable-coated weapon, whose every instinct had been honed for war and then shattered by loss. "Arthur, I'm telling you as a friend and an officer, stay back," Sergeant Miller warned, his hand hovering near his service weapon. "He took a chunk out of a master trainer yesterday. The board signed the order. He's being transported for euthanasia at 0800. He's a liability we can't afford." Arthur tilted his head, his sightless eyes fixed somewhere just past the sergeant's shoulder. To everyone else, Havoc was a broken trigger, a danger to the public. But Arthur didn't hear aggression. He heard the frantic, rhythmic pacing of a soul trapped in a kill zone of its own memories. He remembered that sound. He had made that sound himself, years ago, in a hospital bed in Landstuhl after the RPG ambush that took his sight and his entire squad. "He's not a liability," Arthur said, his voice cutting through the snarls with a calm, surgical precision. "He's a survivor who's still waiting for an extraction that never came. You're looking at his teeth, Sergeant. I'm listening to his heart. It's beating at 140 beats per minute because he thinks he's still under fire. He doesn't need a needle. He needs a brother-in-arms who knows the way out of the dark." Arthur reached for the heavy iron latch. The handlers stepped back, their breath hitching. They saw a blind man walking into the jaws of a beast. Arthur saw a fellow warrior who had been a lead among an exceptional breed and was now being discarded because his wounds didn't bleed where people could see them. With a steady click, the gate swung open. The silence that followed the opening of the gate was more terrifying than the noise. Havoc stopped mid-lunge, his chest heaving, his muscles coiled like high-tension cables ready to snap. He stared at the man who had dared enter his territory without a bite sleeve or a shock collar. Arthur didn't move toward him. He didn't issue a command. He simply sat down on the cold concrete floor, crossing his legs, and laid his white cane across his lap like a peace offering. "I know it's dark in there, buddy," Arthur whispered, his voice low and gravelly. "I know the smells don't match the place you're in. You're looking for your handler, aren't you? You're wondering why the air doesn't smell like him anymore." The dog let out a low, guttural warning, a vibration that Arthur felt in his own bones. But Arthur didn't flinch. He began to speak about the night everything shattered, the heat of the Afghan sand, the sudden weight of a world ending, and the terrifying realization that he would never see the sun again. He spoke to Havoc not as a master to a pet, but as one combat veteran to another. He described the weight that commands couldn't touch and the agony of being a hero that everyone was suddenly afraid of. As the minutes stretched into an hour, the sergeant and the trainers watched through the observation glass, stunned. The wild beast began to slow his pacing. The frantic, snapping at shadows ceased. Havoc moved closer, sniffing the air around Arthur. He recognized the scent, not of fear, which he had been fed for weeks, but silent companionship and a shared history of fire. For the first time since his mission went wrong, Havoc wasn't being managed. He was being seen, in the shared darkness of the kennel. Two broken legacies were beginning to find a common frequency. The shocking moment came when Arthur did the one thing the police academy manual strictly forbade. He reached out his hand, palm up, and tucked his fingers in a gesture of absolute vulnerability. He offered his hand to the predator, that had sent 3 men to the emergency room. The sergeant nearly called the code to intervene, but something stopped him. The tension in the room was laser-locked on the space between the man's skin and the dog's wet nose. Havoc didn't lunge. He didn't snarl. He leaned forward, his nostrils fluttering as he took in the scent of the man who lived in the same shadow world he did. Then, slowly, the 90-pound warrior lowered his head. He didn't bite. He pressed his forehead against Arthur's palm, a textbook-perfect gesture of surrender and trust. Arthur's fingers found the soft fur behind Havoc's ears, feeling the scars from shrapnel that matched the ones on his own face. "You don't have to fight anymore," Arthur told him, his voice thick with emotion. "The mission is over. We're going home." In that moment, the preliminary paperwork for euthanasia became irrelevant. The dangerous liability had vanished, replaced by a dog who finally had permission to stop fighting. The trainers watched in tears as the blind veteran stood up and the dog, who had refused every leash for a month, stepped into place at Arthur's left side, his shoulder pressed against Arthur's leg in a bond forged in fire. They weren't a man and a dog. They were a unit. The resolution of their story didn't happen in a kennel, but on a busy street corner 3 months later. Arthur and Havoc were walking toward the park when a frantic cry broke the afternoon air. A child had wandered into the path of a distracted driver. Before the crowd could even scream, Havoc was moving. He didn't need a command. He sensed the threat in the environment with the surgical precision of the elite SEAL dog he used to be. With a thunderous burst of speed, Havoc intercepted the child, nudging her safely back onto the sidewalk just as the car screeched past. The crowd gasped, expecting the wild dog to stay aggressive, but Havoc immediately returned to Arthur's side, sitting calmly, his eyes scanning the perimeter for further danger. He wasn't a 4-legged weapon anymore. He was a guardian. The police department didn't just rescind the euthanasia order. They officially reinstated Havoc as a community ambassador, assigned permanently to Arthur. The story of the blind veteran and the untameable dog became a living legacy for the city. It proved that broken things can be made whole if they are given connection over fear. Arthur no longer felt like a liability to society, and Havoc was no longer a caged predator. Together, they proved that true courage isn't about never falling down. It's about having the loyalty and heart to help another warrior rise. As they walked away, the dog's tail gave a single, rhythmic wag against Arthur's leg, a silent signal that the extraction was finally complete. They were home. The sun began to set over the training grounds, casting long, golden shadows that stretched across the grass. Arthur stood at the edge of the field, his hand resting lightly on the handle of Havoc's harness. There was no tension in the leather anymore, no pulling, no frantic lunging, just a steady, rhythmic connection between two beings who had finally found their way home. The sergeant watched them from the porch of the K-9 unit, a folder in his hand. Inside wasn't a death warrant or a liability report, but a new set of orders. Havoc had been officially designated as the first Veteran Liaison K-9, a role created specifically for a dog that didn't just follow commands, but understood the silent language of the soul. "You know," the sergeant said, stepping down to join them, "everyone thought he was broken. We thought the mission had destroyed him." Arthur smiled. His sightless eyes turned toward the horizon, as if he could feel the warmth of the light. "He wasn't broken, Sergeant. He was just carrying a heavy pack in a world that forgot how to help him take it off. Warriors don't need to be fixed. They just need to know they aren't fighting the aftermath alone." As they walked away, the sound of Arthur's cane tapping the pavement was perfectly synced with the soft thud of Havoc's paws. They were living proof that true courage isn't about never falling down or never being scarred by the fire. It's about the loyalty that remains when the smoke clears. Some bonds are forged in the heat of battle, and others are sealed in the quiet moments of shared understanding. But the strongest bonds are those that transcend the darkness. Arthur and Havoc were no longer defined by the night everything shattered. They were defined by the strength they found to rise together. In the end, they didn't just save each other's lives. They saved each other's purpose. And that is the greatest legacy any warrior can leave behind. Some bonds are forged in fire, and others are found in the quietest moments of healing. If the story of Arthur and Havoc reminded you that no one is ever truly too far gone, then join our circle. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for Mr. Bryan Tales. We don't just tell stories here. We honor the resilience of the human spirit. Because every hero, two-legged or four, deserves to have their tale told. Until next time, stay brave and keep seeking the light.